Hello, and welcome to the Rankadvertiser podcast, where we inspire, enlighten, and empower every single listener today. Today, we're going to be talking about a startup in Germany. I have with me Joe Menninger, who's a startup squad consultant and host of the startuprad.io podcast. Without further ado, Mr. Joe, how you doing today?
Hey, Glory. Thanks. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. So we are talking about a startup today. What are some of the idea that comes in mind when you meet a startup or once you're starting a startup? What are the things that you look for?
Oh, maybe I should take a few steps back where I'm coming from. So I started hosting even one step further back. I have a friend who's a freelance developer, and he said he knows someone that is doing a podcast back in 2012, and I said, okay, yeah, that's nice. You know someone who's doing a podcast? Yeah, maybe I'll join him for one or two episodes. Well, that was 9 years ago, and I haven't missed a month since podcasting. The first podcast that I did was then stopped. It was a podcast talking about startup news in German only. And then I thought, oh, there's a much bigger market out there if you do it in English, because you can reach the whole world instead of just German. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So I get to meet a lot of startups. I get to request here on my show something like 10 times a week, but I can only grant like two, maybe three startups an interview slot on my podcast each month. So there's a big demand, and therefore I'm always looking if they're fitting into my show. I look at the founders and I look what they are doing, because you can imagine there's a lot of online shops out there. By now, big in Germany is also a lot of 10-minute delivery, fast delivery shops out there that are basically platforms where people on bicycles deliver stuff. It started out with food, but now also got into drugs, medicine, and stuff like that. And that is something I really don't take too much because it gets boring over time. Therefore, I'm always looking out for really new and really interesting startup ideas. For example, I just talked to a startup out of Berlin. Barely anybody knows, but they are global top 5 custodian of crypto assets all over the world for institutional clients. That is more the stuff I'm looking for. I'm trying to bring the people, the startups they would not read about in international press. And most people make the mistake only to focus on Berlin. Don't get me wrong, Berlin is important. It is the biggest startup hub in Europe. But if you only look at Berlin, you're missing out something between 80 and 85% of the startup activity in the country. So there's a lot that doesn't get covered, and that's what we are looking for.
Perfect. For people who are listening to us right now, we're talking about startup radio as well. For people who doesn't know about it, for instance, once I was looking online, I saw that it was the word first startup and tech radio. So could you tell us a little bit about it in a little detail for my listener who haven't heard about it?
Oh yeah, of course, for sure. So I was working as a startup scout for something like 2.5 years, and then the company decided to close down the whole department I was working in, and I decided to take the money they offered me to fend out for myself, and started beginning 2021 at the height of Corona, my own entrepreneurship career. Admittedly, not the best timing, but somehow I made it work. I'm working there as a startup scout, and most of the startups I meet is through startupradio, which is my podcast. But then I had the idea, how can I get broader reach? How can I reach more people? And I was talking to a lot of internet radio stations, talk radio stations, business radio stations, something like this. And at one point, I reached out to the software behind it that some of them are actually using. And it turned out I had enough content at this point in time to really start my own internet radio station because you could listen to me if you really want to. It's a question if you want to for more than 2 weeks without sleeping, without doing anything else, which may even be a little bit too much for my wife. So I decided to ask other people to join me. Your audience may know Stanford University. There's a show on campus radio called Laptop Radio that is on my station as well. Tech.eu, one of the largest tech blogs in Europe, and they are also doing a podcast, and the podcast is on there, as well as PayPod, Radio Free Enterprise, and many, many more from across the world. Even Voice of Fintech from Switzerland is on there. So there's a lot of stuff, new podcasters you can discover, a cybersecurity specialist, very interesting stuff. And we try to mix as much as possible there and focus on a few topics each day. So far, it has been doing pretty good. I didn't do any advertisement for it, but I started with something like mind-blowing 300 listeners in the first month. So I started it in middle of Corona, February 2021. And now it's almost a year past and it's growing like crazy. When I look now at the station, more than 6,000 people listened to it in the last 30 days.
Wow, that's a very amazing growth, and I'm very happy to hear that. And I wanted to ask about Germany because we're talking about Germany as well. I know some of our listeners might have traveled to Germany, and some of you might be amazed that Germany has a large startup scene. So as you are on the ground and you're seeing it every day, what can you tell people, for example, who are here, who listen to this podcast, who are from UK or USA, and they're thinking about what is kind of a good spot to go ahead and see some new startup to invest in or to partner with. Can you tell us a little bit of your experience of startup in Germany?
I may sound like a marketer, but of course the best first step is to listen to my podcast. And it really depends on what you're looking for. The most startups in Germany you cannot see because they're very, very specialized. I was just talking about the startup who keeps safe the crypto assets as a custodian of institutional investors. I have talked to a very smart lady who started a nanostructure startup where they can reproduce nanostructures. She has a PhD and a postdoc and stuff like that. So what I'm going for there is it's not the business to consumer business you will find here mostly. Most of the stuff that's interesting for me and my audience is B2B. Don't get me wrong, you find a lot of business to customer businesses out there. HelloFresh may be an example you know in the US. N26, the neobank, is also something you may know. And there are a lot of other examples out there, but they're just the tip of the iceberg here.
Wow,
there are a lot of interesting startups, especially if you go deeper into stuff like cybersecurity, deep tech, chip design. What I've seen there, so there's a lot there. If you want to be really, really geeky,
that's really amazing. I didn't know that there were also crypto startup in Germany. That's amazing to hear because in the last episode I had Amesh was talking about NFT and we were talking about crypto for the first time on the podcast. It's really great to hear that Germany also have a lot of startup in the crypto industry and wallets. That's really amazing. And earlier you said that you also had an opportunity to be in the US and you've been also in Germany. How do you see kind of the entrepreneurial spirit in these two countries? What are some of the things you would see, for example, in Germany, how others people do business, and in US? What are kind of your perspective about it?
Such generalizations are always pretty hard, and it always reflects a little bit my personal opinion as well as the people I've met. It used to be the case that the entrepreneurship approach in Germany is much, much more cautious than in the US, but now that starts to change quite fast. I'm just thinking about all those quick delivery startups I was talking about, some of them from the founding to the unicorn status, meaning valued above 1 billion US dollar, it took them less than a year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really fast. And what are some of the things, let's say, for example, someone who's listening to the podcast and they do have a business or they have a startup that they're working on and they are seeking to come to the radio, for example, to kind of share a little bit about their business on your podcast. How does that work?
Well, it's always good to talk to me. But I have to tell you guys, a lot of those are not really well prepared, a lot of people who are reaching out. I would personally suggest you look at the podcast you are targeting. For example, you're looking at a top 100 business podcasts in the US. Go to the podcast charts, go through the podcast and look which one fits you best and then approach them directly in a tailored message, because I tended to get a lot of messages that go out to 100, 200 people. But now I do have an AI filter, and if it's not somehow tailored, it doesn't get through there.
Definitely. That's kind of
and the very important thing is, why should I cover you? What's special? That is not a question only I ask, but a lot of other outlets will ask as well. What's special about it? For example, I tended to get a lot of messages like, oh, look, they wrote about me in English. You should do something as well. Why should I? There's nothing I can win with that. Yeah, honestly, put yourself in the shoes of those people.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. You know, sometimes as much as you want to cover a lot of startup, but they got to pitch to you their own business very well so that you are interested about it and you're like, okay, you know, maybe I would consider it. You know, sometimes it's really good for business owner, especially startup, to really know how to pitch themselves in the business as well. And any particular thing that you'd like the audience to know about Germany or that you'd like to share?
That is a good question. If you're looking to set up a startup, make sure you get the right spot. What I'm going for with this is, of course, Berlin is pretty popular. It's pretty big as a startup, but there's also a lot going on in other places. For example, deep tech. There's Munich, a very good place. Hamburg is the world's, I do believe, third largest hub in aviation because they have a lot of Airbus manufacturing there. So after Seattle, after Toulouse in France, where the final assembly of Airbus takes place, it's already number 3. If you're looking to do something in insurance business, Köln, Düsseldorf may be a very good spot. Finance, Frankfurt as well. And also, you guys may have heard about the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine. Mm-hmm. It used to be a small startup. The founder is a professor at the university in Mainz. And that led to a very, very special situation because the city of Mainz, admittedly, I was born there, so I may be a little bit biased here. They had to always to save money. They had like very small budgets, but then BioNTech came and they've been huge, meaning Germany is one of the 10 largest industrial nations in the world, and they've been growing so strong. They added 0.5% to the GDP growth of the whole nation.
Wow, that's impressive.
And that led to a lot of tax income for the city. And now this city is in the process trying their best to become a biotech hub for other people out there, for other startups to not only build there, but also to settle there from abroad. So that is also something you have to have in mind. Just don't do, oh yeah, let's go there. Do your research, do your homework, go to pages where you get statistics, go to places where you get information, or talk to people who have information.
Definitely, that is a great point. And my next question is, what kind of advice would you give someone who want to start a startup in Germany? What kind of advice will you give them to be successful, whether they are from another country, they're trying to come to Germany to start a business, or they're from Germany and they're listening to us and they want to start a business? What are some of the advice you'd give to them?
If you are from abroad and thinking about starting a business in Germany, it's definitely possible, but depending on where you're coming from, best would be if you first talk to a lawyer, not to fall into any traps, get into any trouble. If you are from Germany, what I have learned, you have to do a product market fit test if there's really demand for it, and don't try to build everything up to a perfect stage and then release everything. Do it as early as possible and then adapt. A lot of very interesting, very successful companies had a really crappy first product. They listened to the feedback and they got better and better and better. That's the way to go, and start as small as possible. If you have a rich uncle and you have 5 million investment at hand, hey, don't worry, totally fine. Try your best with it. But for most people like me, it's doing really small steps, always adjusting.
Nice, nice. And this is just a question that I'm asking. I know that in Germany people speak German as well. Is there a large group of people who speak English in Germany? Because I know I do have my aunt there, and she had to learn Germany a little bit. She was telling me about how cool the language is and how difficult it is to learn as well. And the reason why I'm asking is also for people who would love to move to Germany and they only speak English. Is there a possibility to find people who can help them as well, either learn the language or find people who speak English as well?
I do believe there are lots of opportunities to really find possibilities to learn German. For example, Babbel comes to mind, which is not only a language learning app. Disclaimer, I'm not paid by them, but they are also from Berlin. But also in a lot of the big cities, there is a big English-speaking community. For example, here for Frankfurt, I know that there is a weekly newspaper in Chinese. There's a weekly newspaper in Hindi, just for the expat community that is interested in this. As well, there is a big Vietnamese community around here, and a lot of people who are just stopping by, traveling through Frankfurt. And there's also, of course, due to history, there's a big American and British community here as well. A lot of places you get along pretty well with English. I have a friend who did his MBA here in Frankfurt and then decided to stay. He is originally from India, and I do believe he's living here for almost 10 years. His German is not really good, but he's still getting by in English. So that shouldn't trouble you.
Oh, nice. That's really good to hear. And my next question is for investors who listen to the podcast and looking for opportunity to invest into startup. Do you have any top 5 or top 3 startup that's in your mind that you think that would be kind of a good place for people to start searching before they become blue chip or something?
I just have one advice: hire me as a startup scout.
Yes,
that's my business.
Okay. Okay, for those of you who are listening to us, make sure to check out Joe at startupradio. Is there a good spot for investors to go and write an email by visiting the site, and how do they get in touch with you?
Actually, I have an audience survey that is ongoing. I frequently ask the people to fill it out. And the latest data I got from 2021, like collected all over the year, something like 83-85% are listening to it for professional reason. Most of the people just during their commute in the morning, or it used to be before Corona. And more than 45, around 45-ish percent of the people are listening to startupradio to find new investment opportunities. So it's already set up that way.
Nice. That's definitely a good thing. Especially, I meet a lot of people who ask me about investments. It's great to always see beyond the US and seeing what's out there in the world as well. And is there some mechanism also to invest online in Germany? Let's say, for example, someone who's listening here and they don't even know where to start. Of course, they're gonna reach out to you. But do you have any anything that you would like to share? Also, like, say, for example, for people who wanna buy into a company online, is there any possibility to do that?
Actually, that's pretty tough to do at all. Not only that you don't know the people, but usually it's pretty tough to get in those places at all. Reasoning behind it is a lot of the very good. Let me take again one step back. Sorry, I'm the king of detours. I know there is currently floating a lot of VC money around,
yes.
And a lot of it goes to Europe. because there are good opportunities. And of course, Germany as the largest economy also gets a lot of attention for that. That means the very good and popular startups, they get flooded with offers. I just talked to one fintech here from around. They're not too smaller, and they got like 23 term sheets to select 5 investors. And when an investor sends a term sheet, that means they are willing to invest. So they really could pick the best investors. And if you then see that there are maybe investment portals tailored to foreign investors, you can already see that it's likely not the best startups that are going there, because they would get other good offers. And also, I would personally shy away from investing a large part of my personal net worth into a startup I have never met in person.
That's a good advice for people who are wanting to invest. Definitely make sure to do the research, have the expert in, the people who have expertise on the ground, rather than trying to invest online when you don't know anything about a company. That's very, very an important advice right here. And as we are running toward,
Sorry, you wouldn't believe what kind of pitches for investment I get. For example, one of them just last year was they wanted to be the Uber of dog waste removal, meaning a kind of Uber that picks up dog poop and fund it with issuing a cryptocurrency.
No way.
Yeah, it was not from Germany, and it was a little bit questionable because no person showed up anywhere there, and there was really nothing you can say, oh, it's located there, this person is in charge. It was just completely anonymous website. It's also something I would that raised a big red flag for me, because if you don't have people who show up who are responsible for an investment, that's really not a good idea, despite the very questionable business model there.
Yes, definitely. That is a very good advice. And as you also interview some of those startup founder, and what are some of the key points that as you're interviewing them, what are some of the key points that really matter to you once they come on the show?
Actually, for me as a podcaster, it's very important that they have an interesting story to tell and that they are entertaining.
Okay.
They could have the best business model in the world. If they are not entertaining, they are not necessarily a fit for my podcast, but of course for my startup scouting work. I just give you one example. We interviewed early 2021 Germany's Business Angel of the Year 2020. And I asked him, how did you start with your first business angel investment? And he said, well, it was at a wedding at a bar and I was already pretty tipsy.
I see. That's amazing.
That's not what you would expect from one of the most successful business angels in Germany, but apparently that's one of the way it can work. And also, I frequently ask the people, how did you get together? How did you finally decide to do this business? And it frequently appears to either involve wine or beer.
Yes, and that really tells you that socializing is a big thing in Germany. Outside people from Germany came over and some friend, and then it was really nice to hear stories. And I'm myself excited to be in Germany one of those upcoming year to come, and hopefully I'll stop by and say hello as well.
You should come in the pre-Christmas time, sometime between end of November and Christmas. And for the very simple reason, there are Christmas markets out here, and you just go out there and have a hot mulled wine straight at the booth. You can have a lot of very sweet, tasty treats there and buy a lot of useless stuff you can hang on your Christmas tree. It doesn't get better than this.
Yes. Joe, as we are reaching toward the end of the podcast here, I'm wanting to also give us an opportunity to listen from you. What is one thing you'd like the audience to know, or something that you have at heart that you'd like to share? And also, it would be great to hear how can people get in touch with you who are listening to the podcast as well.
What's important, what's close to my heart, if you want to start a company, you have to build a mental framework. It's not as easy as, do the maximum every day. No, it's much more it's much different. It's much more than just that. For example, it's 8 p.m. here on a Saturday in Germany, almost 9 p.m. right now. And I usually don't work on weekends. I made an exception for you, Glory. And that is some of the rules you have to get, you have to decide on, you have to build your mental framework, not only to prevent you personally from burning out, but also to make your best decisions. That is also something I talk on the podcast frequently. And how people can reach me, they can either get at www.startupradio.io and reach out to me. That's the website of the podcast, or startup.radio, and fill out the contact form. I'll also get that one.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Joe. I don't know if you have any last word.
It was a pleasure being here. I had a lot of fun here.
Me as well. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much for making an exception for us and for being on the podcast and sharing all the expertise and knowledge. And for those of you who are listening, I would recommend definitely to go to Startup the Radio. And for those of you who want to invest in Germany or want to find some business partner in Germany, make sure to reach out to Joe, who's the expert in the ground, because he interviewed a lot of the startup there. It's going to be a great place for you to start by communicating with him. Go at startup.radio, and that's how you're going to get in touch with you. Joe, thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you in a bit.